The first ballistic shot. For decades, mainstream astrophysics has documented the events of October 15, 1991, under a convenient, statistical lie. The public records from the Fly's Eye Observatory in Utah classify the "oh my god" particle as a random, ultra-high-energy cosmic ray, a harmless anomaly born from distant, chaotic stellar emissions. That is the prescribed sedation. The raw telemetry dictates a chillingly different reality. What punctured our atmospheric boundary that night was not natural. It was a single, isolated proton carrying exactly 3 times 10 to the power of 20 electron volts of raw kinetic force. A microscopic projectile, packing the mechanical density of a baseball hurled at 100 km per hour, fired cleanly into our local grid. The subatomic friction generated by this strike caused an immediate, temporary microfissure in the gravity mesh of our upper atmosphere. It acted as an uncompromising kinetic drill, tearing through the inorganic tissue of the void without a single microsecond of deceleration, violently violating every established thermodynamic metric in the sector. How long until the next shot shatters the glass? On the ground, the physical reality of this breach triggered an instantaneous system failure. Within minutes of the impact, automated alarm protocols at high-altitude monitoring stations overloaded, terminal screens wiped to a dead black, and data servers physically overheated while trying to process an equation that mathematically concluded in our sudden extinction. The corrupted data extracted from the cooling hardware confirmed the true scale of the threat. This was not a random hardware malfunction or a fleeting statistical fluctuation. The absolute silence preceding the impact, entirely devoid of any natural acoustic signature, combined with the unapologetic mechanical precision of the strike, proves this was a calculated ballistic test. An unidentified mass in the deep dark just fired a warning shot, systematically measuring the structural resilience of our protective orbit before initiating a full-scale, physical collapse. Warning: critical system glitch detected. You are accessing restricted forensic logs regarding an active, recurring orbital threat. The terminal logic is struggling to render the decrypted archive of this mechanical breach. To bypass the firewall and maintain credentials for future files, you must subscribe to maintain access. The vacuum of the outer orbital boundary is theoretically dead space, a frictionless zone governed by rigid thermodynamics. Yet, at the exact coordinates of the breach, the raw telemetry of the sector recorded an impossible mechanical event. A solitary subatomic mass, moving with the devastating kinetic density of a macroobject, forcefully punctured the local grid without a single warning wave. There was no gradual approach, only an instantaneous, violent insertion of raw energy that temporarily shattered the surrounding photons. Classical models immediately attempted to neutralize this anomaly by classifying it as a decaying signal, a random emission from a dying star millions of light-years away. It is mathematically comforting to blame a statistical flaw or a transient glitch in the cosmic radiation background. But the sheer scale of the brute force impact, compressed into a microscopic area, shattered that fragile rationalization in an instant. The physics of the deep void do not allow for such concentrated, relentless momentum to occur by mere chance. The Greason-Zatsepin-Kuzmin limit acts as an uncompromising physical wall, dictating that any particle traveling through the deep void at such velocities must collide with the microwave background, losing energy until it is entirely dismantled. The corrupted data proved this mass arrived with zero deceleration and zero structural failure. How did it cross an endless ocean of cosmic friction without losing a single electron volt? The math dictates it is physically impossible for this mass to have traveled a long, intergalactic distance. This mathematical breakdown leaves only one clinical conclusion, entirely erasing the comfort of a distant, natural origin. This was not a cosmic accident exhausted by a long journey through the dark. The pristine integrity of the mass proves the firing mechanism was positioned in the immediate vicinity, an unexplained interference deployed at point-blank range to test a brittle containment boundary. Science wanted a random ray, the physics delivered a bullet. To understand the terrifying nature of this orbital breach, one must look at the physical distortion left in the wake of the trajectory. As the unidentified mass tore through the dead space, it did not create a standard energy dispersion or a predictable thermal decay. Instead, the raw kinetic drill compressed the local physics, temporarily snapping the fabric of the vacuum itself. It generated a severe microfissure within the void, a physical impossibility that brutally suffocated the surrounding light. The fragmented logs from the impact zone reveal a complete absence of any preliminary energy buildup or natural acoustic signature. Standard cosmic events broadcast their arrival across the spectrum, bleeding radiation in predictable, chaotic waves. This entity, however, was surgically silent until the exact microsecond of the collision. If it was not a natural stellar emission, what exact mechanism is currently resting in the absolute dark, calibrating the next round? It operated as a relentless, focused mechanical interference, designed specifically to avoid preliminary detection by any orbital sweeping grid. There is no mathematical grace left to explain this away, and no statistical anomaly left to hide behind. The cold, clinical evidence solidifies that this was not a wandering fragment of a twin graveyard galaxy, but a localized, calculated ballistic assessment. A structural failure was forcefully triggered in our outer grid by an artificial source, methodically measuring the exact amount of kinetic pressure required to completely collapse our isolated perimeter. The void is not empty, it is armed. The terminal logic is currently restricting further access to the unredacted orbital telemetry regarding this active, ticking clock. The next breach will not be a test, and the absolute execution has only been temporarily postponed. You must hit the like button to validate your security clearance and decrypt the rest of the archive before the viewing window is permanently closed. The blind spot of mainstream science was intentionally engineered to maintain public sedation. While standard astrophysics aggressively classified the 3 × 10⁻20 electron-volt strike as a random, ultra-high-energy cosmic ray, they deliberately ignored the hidden forensic telemetry embedded within the subatomic friction. The particle did not carry the erratic, decaying signature of a distant, dying star, it possessed the absolute, rigid geometry of a calibrated artificial structure. Standard models entirely glossed over the fact that the projectile's trajectory was mathematically perfect, a flawless vector that bypassed every natural gravitational defense mechanism our sector possesses without a single deviation. This perfect trajectory exposes the terrifying twist: the strike was not a statistical anomaly, but a deliberate orbital breach initiated from a close-range staging ground. The undeniable proof lies in the kinetic density of the anomaly's localized equation, which was so computationally severe that it triggered an immediate physical backlash on Earth. Within the monitoring facilities attempting to process the raw math, high-tier mainframe components violently failed, primary data drives physically melted onto their steel mounting tables, their internal cooling systems suffocated by the thermal output required to render an undeniable extinction protocol. The hardware burned out before the human mind could fully comprehend the threat. The definitive breakdown of standard logic occurs at the exact coordinate of impact, where the rigid laws of thermodynamics were completely dismantled by brute mechanical force. A natural cosmic event would scatter upon hitting our atmospheric boundary, instantly bleeding its energy into the surrounding vacuum. This mass did not scatter, it acted as a solid, kinetic ram, proving it was shielded by a localized, unexplained interference. If the deep void is truly an empty, frictionless dead zone, what exactly is resting in the dark, pulling the trigger? This was never a mere scientific discovery waiting for peer review. It was the preliminary phase of an active, mechanical cataclysm. The temporary structural failure recorded in our upper atmosphere was simply the targeting laser locking onto its coordinates, confirming that our defensive perimeter is brittle, exposed, and entirely incapable of stopping the immediate physical danger that is currently aligning its next shot. Out in the macro scale of the deep void, the physical impact of this singular strike violently warped the local physics of our sector. The brute mechanical force of the projectile did not just pass through the vacuum, it fractured the unseen gravitational containment grids that dictate the rigid rotation of our outer celestial bodies. At the exact coordinate of the penetration, the dead space itself was brutally compressed, forcing the surrounding cosmic radiation to aggressively splinter against an invisible, lingering mechanical wake, delivering maximum kinetic transfer with absolutely zero deceleration. The subsequent environmental degradation of the impact zone is an ongoing, visceral tear in the fabric of the local orbital mechanics. The resulting gravitational friction is actively crushing the surrounding dark matter, creating microscopic, severely compromised zones where light simply ceases to operate. This is not a gradual stellar decay, it is a cold, tactile fracturing of the cosmic architecture, as if an immense, invisible pressure is forcefully bearing down on the ruptured entry point, systematically widening the hole. Against the sheer scale of this exposed external force, our entire solar system is reduced to a fragile, mathematically insignificant target trapped in a brittle bubble. The localized mechanics responsible for the initial shot are completely immune to the standard physics of our isolated sector, silently hovering just beyond the orbital detection threshold, calculating the precise kinetic density required for the final collapse. How much mechanical pressure can a compromised boundary sustain before it forcefully snaps? The establishment continues to peddle the comforting illusion of a random cosmic ray, actively burying the corrupted data of this mechanical failure to prevent global panic. To bypass this institutional firewall and expose the ticking clock targeting our orbital grid, you must act as a decentralized relay. Share this classified forensic dossier with anyone who still trusts the official scientific narrative, distributing the raw telemetry before the next ballistic test permanently erases our system from the dark. The mathematical proof extracted from the raw telemetry guarantees that our local gravitational defense mechanisms are completely obsolete. Out in the macro scale of the dead zone, the invisible wake of the 1991 anomaly is still actively dismantling the ambient fields of surrounding celestial bodies. Entire clusters of dark matter and distant stellar masses are being silently crushed by the lingering kinetic resonance of the strike, proving that our established laws of thermodynamics are merely localized suggestions, easily overwritten by a superior mechanical force operating in the deep void. The speed at which this projectile traversed the outer vacuum completely ignored the physical limitations of our sector. It operated on a brutal, frictionless trajectory, bypassing the heliosphere and the massive gravitational wells of the outer gas giants without registering a single microfluctuation in its structural integrity. It did not negotiate with our orbital mechanics, it simply pierced the cosmic grid as if our entire solar system offered no physical resistance whatsoever. This leads to a chilling, clinical realization: any theoretical preparation against this external mass is mathematically irrelevant. The densest shields our sector can provide are nothing more than brittle glass against a localized kinetic drill that refuses to lose momentum. How do you brace for a catastrophic impact when the underlying fabric of your reality is structurally incompatible with the incoming force? There is no strategic countermeasure to be engineered. We are merely observing the cold, methodical calibration of an external architecture that operates with absolute mechanical efficiency, leaving us isolated within a broken physical model, waiting for the secondary sequence to initiate. The sheer mechanical indifference of the anomaly is the most terrifying variable in the entire equation. It does not care that our orbital sensors registered the initial breach, nor does it require our comprehension to finalize its trajectory. It exists solely to apply insurmountable kinetic pressure to a specific set of coordinates, operating entirely devoid of intent, hesitation, or mercy within the dark. While mainstream science publicly broadcasts the comforting illusion of a decaying signal, the synchronized physical destruction of the evidence on Earth tells the true forensic story. Deep underground, Heavily insulated vault doors are quietly locking down entirely on automated protocols, and classified data servers holding the unredacted telemetry are being purposefully pushed to thermal overload. Government mainframes are actively melting their own hard drives into slag, ensuring that the undeniable proof of the anomaly is permanently erased from the terminal before the public can verify the math. The sky is fracturing, and the institutions are burning the archives. This creates a suffocating reality. We are mechanically trapped inside a compromised void, blindly orbiting an impending extinction event that has already locked onto our coordinates. The outer grid is cracked, the internal alarms are forcefully suffocated, and the local space is systematically preparing for the final structural collapse. Who exactly is managing the containment protocols while we patiently wait for the final execution? The forensic verdict now falls entirely on you, and the system requires your input to finalize the decrypted log. You must use the comments section below to register your conclusion. Type collapse if you believe this was an unguided breakdown of our local physics. Type target if you accept the clinical proof that an artificial external architecture is actively calibrating our absolute removal. The implications dictate a mathematical reality we cannot survive. Leave your mark before the screen goes dark.